God bless you, dear students. This is your English lesson, The Great Fire of London. This is a pic. You can see the Great Fire of London. And Samuel Pepys, England's most famous diarist. Students, the Great Fire of London started in a baker's shop in Pudding Lane during the night of 1st September 1666. They raged for several days. Only about 20 people died, but the fire engulfed 4/5 of the old city, which in 1666 was made up of narrow stream and timber frame houses massed closely together. The Great Fires destroyed 13,200 houses, 89 churches, and many of London's greatest landmarks, including St. Paul's Cathedral. Students, Samuel Pepys is England's most famous diarist. A diarist is someone who writes a diary, just as a biographer is someone who writes a biography. He held an important post as secretary to the Admiralty and kept a diary from 1660 until his eyesight began to fall in 1669. You can see this picture of London, how the fire affected the city of London, how the people are suffering and in miserable condition. The fire burned for 4 days in September 1666, 2nd September, 3rd September, 4th and 5th September. During the Great Fire of London on Sunday, 2nd September 1666, Thomas Ferrier was baking in his shop in Pudding Lane. A fire broke out. Thomas thought he had put it out, but at 1 in the morning, the baker's shop was engulfed in flames and the fire had begun to spread. Students, engulfed means swallow and rage means happen with violence. This is the Pudding Lane EC3 where the fire pot. You can see that everything is burning and there are blazing flames. You can see, and the St. Paul's Cathedral is also affected and destroyed. This is the extract, students. The following extract are from Samuel Pepys' diary written during the Great Fire. The waterside is the edge of London's great river, the River Thames. 2nd September 1666, so down with my hair, a heart full of trouble in the waterside, and there got a boat and saw a lamentable fire. Poor Mitchell's house already burned and the fire running further. In a very little time, it got as far as Still Yard while I was there. Everybody endeavoring to remove their goods in 2 little boats. Student, lamentable mean regrettable, and loath mean reluctant, unwilling, and horrid, frightened. And you can see how the people are affected and in a miserable condition, and running here and there to save their lives and the goods. Poor people staying in their houses until the fire touched them, and then running into boats and among their things. The poor pigeons were loath to leave their houses. Loath means reluctant. They were not willing to leave their houses because they were settled there, luggage was there, and this is the reason they don't want to leave their houses. And hovered about the balconies till some of them burned their wings and fled down. Pigeons were also affected. As far as we could see up the hill of the city, there was a most horrid, malicious, bloody flame. Malicious means ill disposed, and not like the flame of an ordinary fire. We saw the fire as entire arc of flame from this to there, other side of the bridge, and arc above a mile along. It made me weep. Samuel Pepys writes that it was a bitter condition that really made me weep to see it. The churches, houses, all on fire and flaming at once, and the horrid noise the flame made, and the cracking of the houses of their ruin. So homes with a sad heart, and there find everybody discovering and lamenting the fire. 4 September, Sir W. Batten dug a pit in his garden and buried his wine, and I put my office paper there too. In the evening, Sir W. Penn and I dug another hole and I put it in there our Parmesan cheese and wine. You can see the images, students, how it affected. Now begins the blowing up of the house in Tower Street, which at first did frighten people more than anything, but it stopped the fire. St. Paul's is burned and all Cheapside. I wrote to my father this night, but the post house being burned and the letter couldn't go. The Samuel Pepys writes that he wanted to write a letter. He wrote a letter, but he was not able to post it because the post house was burned. 5th September, walked into the moor fields, our feet ready to burn, walking through the town among the hot coals, and find that full of people and poor wretches carrying their goods there, and a great blessing it is to them, and that it is fair weather for them to be outside night and day. Paid 2d for a plain penny loaf. I also saw a poor cat taken out of a hole in the chimney with the hair all burned off its body and yet alive. Students, from the lesson I have chosen the difficult words. You must read it carefully and write on your notebook. The wreck happened with violence, engulfed, as I told you, swollen Admiralty, headquarter of Naval Administration. Lamentable, regrettable, loath, reluctant, unwilling, horrid, frightful, and malicious, ill disposed. And students, Samuel Pepys, he saw a fire and people running here and there. He writes that he saw a fire and people were in terrible conditions. Some were staying in their houses to last minutes until the fire touched them. The pigeons were hovering above the balcony. Still, some of them burnt their wings and fell down. When he saw fire burning from one edge of the bridge to the other, it made him really weep. He was able to hear the noise of the flames and cracking of burning houses. They dug holes to bury their belongings to protect them. They were blown to stop the fire. He saw hot coals scattered everywhere. Every place was crowded with people. Pepys felt great pity for these people. He also saw a cat being pulled out of a chimney hole. All of its hair were burned, but it was still alive. It indicates that in that time of misery, some people were making undue, profits. The price of basic necessities was high. Poor Mitchell house was already burned and fire was running further afraid field. Everybody was endeavoring to remove their belongings into small little boats. He said, I buried cheese into a hole in the garden, and he said that I dug another hole and buried his wine. I paid 2 pence for a plain penny loaf, and I put my office paper in the hole. I will get them when the fire is put out. The streets were too hot to walk on. Our feet were burning from hot coals. Students, I hope so. I am very much clear, and you will get the clear concept of the lesson as you already studied in the class also. Thank you, and God bless you.